it simply took India batters too long to realise they don't need to score all the runs individually. And that was like a quote. And then the headline of the article was, India aren't the perfect T20 international team, but they might be the greatest ever. And then the sub headline is, the only gap in their lineup is bowlers with the ability to hit sixes, and that's something they might have to live with for the moment. Now, I'm not trying to say maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I don't know if that's a Cricinfo clickbait type of headline, but I did look at it and I thought, okay, am I reacting to this because I've just always assumed that general consensus is that the West Indies team of 2012 to 2016, and I completely accept that I may well have West Indian tinted glasses on here, but I just assumed the given take was, well, West Indies had the best T20 team, and if they aren't, they're certainly the trailblazers in the format. Where do you stand, Jarrod, having taken in that T20 series between India and England? Is there merit in saying India might be the greatest ever T20 international side? So that was balanced, Jarrod. Over to you.
It's too early to say that they're the best, but if you're asking of what team could be the best, then they have the ability to score 250 to 320 against a good team. And I don't think the West Indies did, right? Like, that's not the West Indies' fault. The game has just developed since the West Indies played, right? Like, we remember the West Indies for all their hitters. We forget the amount of times Marlon Samuels was 25 not out of 32 balls, knocking the ball around, right? We forget the Lendl Simmons innings, mate, when we go back. And we also forget that there was a lot of ropey bowling, right? There was a lot of Carlos Brathwaite and Darren Sammy and Kyron Pollard. And, you know, so there were things within that team that at times were a little bit not as strong, right? For its period, like, they should have won all 3 World Cups, West Indies. You know, and they didn't always have their best players playing. Sunil Narine didn't play in 2016, did he? He was on the outs with the board at that stage. So they should have been even better than they were. I think what Monga is trying to say, based on what you just read out anyway, I think what he's trying to say is that this is a team that can bat to number 8, number 9 sometimes if they wanted to. They could even bat further. They could basically just pick Bumrah and a bunch of all-rounders, right? If they really wanted to push it that far. They could score at a scoring rate that we've only ever seen in league games, right? So, you know, the Sunrisers and those kinds of teams. They could score at that kind of rate. And then they have this incredible interchangeable all-rounder option, right? So they have Hardik and Nitesh Kumar Reddy. And then they have Akshar, Jadeja's retired, but they have Akshar, Washington Sundar, all available to give them multiple different kinds of spin options. And then they had 3 frontline bowlers in Jasper Bumrah, who might be the best white ball bowler of all time. Mohammad Shami, who's a really good new ball bowler, and Kuldeep Yadav, who's, you know, a fantastic wrist spinner who can move it in both directions. As Monga says, there aren't many weaknesses in that. I wrote about this in when was the Australian World Cup? Was that 2023, I think? Or 2022?
2022, yeah, 2022.
So I wrote about it then. So I was 3 years ahead of Monga, going, if you look on paper what India can do, they can create a T20 side unlike anything we have ever seen before. But there's a big difference between that and knocking, you know, a broken England side around and doing it consistently and winning all the time. And I think, you know, Rob Barron's talked about this a lot. They're only a Bumrah injury away before you don't really trust their bowling anymore, right? Like, it's not quite. Do you remember when Shane Warne was injured and Australia still steamrolled their way through? So not even injured, suspended for drugs, and Australia still won the next 2 World Cups without Shane Warne playing in them, right? I think at the moment, if you were to take out Bumrah, you would look at that and go, oh, it's a bit thinner than I thought it was. But outside of that, they do have like multiple options. I mean, their biggest problem at the moment is they don't know whether Tilak Varma should bat at number 3 or Sky should bat at number 3. Like, that, again, that's the position that probably Marlon Samuels and Lendl Simmons were, you know, sort of vying for in the peak West Indian side. So that's an upgrade on that position. But you also don't have that sort of Darren Sammy, Carlos Brathwaite type player as well, right? They don't have that sort of person who could probably play as a frontline bowler when their bowling is holding up, but can also just hit sixes for fun at the end. Even someone like Hardik, he's probably more of a regular batter. So he's right. They're missing that sort of thing at the other end, which I suppose, did Ramdev bat at number 9 in the World Cup final in 2016? I want to say was, if I remember back,
definitely in the team, but I don't remember how many at bats even. I don't think he had to bat much.
Well, the point being is, I think they used him as insurance batting, right? So you had the position to go back, a step further there. So I think they're like for like sides in many ways. I think India just have more options than maybe the West Indies had. Maybe not as reliant on a couple of players, but West Indies won 2 World Cups and India has won 1 World Cup at the moment, right? Like, we're a long way from that. But I think if you go through the last few years, India probably should have already won a couple of World Cups.